You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. Washington has always been an outdoorsy place. The pandemic supercharged that, leading to an explosion in outdoor recreation, a trend that has largely stayed on the upswing. And this has brought more visitors to rural areas like Skamania County in the southern part of western Washington, bordering Oregon.
Mount St. Helens being probably one of our most popular areas, Beacon Rock, Hamilton Mountain, Dog Mountain, and the wildflowers. So the list is long and lengthy of the most beautiful places. And just the Columbia River Gorge in and of itself is phenomenal.
Summer Scheyer is sheriff of Skamania County. She says there's a problem with all these people getting into the great outdoors. More of them are also getting into trouble and requiring rescue. That's put strain on local resources, and Scheyer says things need to change. She's announced plans for an ordinance that would impose a fine on anyone who requires a search and rescue due to recklessness or negligence. But is it fair to expect hikers in need to help pay for their own assistance? Sheriff Scheyer is joining me now to discuss. Sheriff, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So how often does a hiker or climber these days have to get rescued in Skamania County? I mean, I understand it's really gone up in frequency in recent years.
Right. So this year has been an exceptional amount of missions at this point. 550% increase from 2024 in the first quarter, a 200% increase in April, a 400% increase in May, and now I'm crunching the numbers for June. As of Friday, we were at 450% increase. So even after all of this messaging about how dangerous Skamania County is in the outdoors and how to be prepared, we have a 450% increase. But that was on Friday. We've had a mission on Saturday, and we've had a mission yesterday. So we're now probably up to, I believe, 13 for just a month. To put it into perspective, I think we're at about 42 missions total this year so far. In the entire year of last year, we had 54 missions.
Wow. So way ahead already for this year.
Correct.
What are the kinds of operations? Where are people getting stuck that they need help? What kinds of things are they doing generally? Or, if you can share a couple examples.
Sure. So I think where the major problem is, and this is where I go down the negligence or reckless language. Accidents do happen. I'm in the job of accidents happen. So I understand that. And it's very easy for us to articulate reckless or negligence, the wording, as I sent to somebody, that it's already in our RCW. So this isn't reinventing the wheel. But I'm seeing people go out way beyond their ability. They are not in the shape to be able to do some of these hikes that are very clearly marked either at the kiosk or a quick Google search will explain to you how difficult these are, i.e. Dog Mountain. We've had numerous problems on Dog Mountain this year. It's a difficult hike in just its nature in being steep, but also the terrain itself. You have to have all the right equipment. Hamilton Mountain has its own issues as well. But we're all over the place and it's inconsistent. I mean, Mount St. Helens, that's consistently a problem, and only because it's just difficult, it's exposed, and a lot of people don't realize what they're getting themselves into.
So they don't equip the right, crampons, poles, stuff that they need to actually pass the terrain? Or is it like they don't wear the right, layers and they're getting exposed to the elements? They run out of water? What kinds of stuff creates this, situation where they are unprepared?
All the above. So it starts with a quick Google search. Look at the terrain. Look what you're getting yourself into. There's all the information in the palm of your hand. Secondly, 10 essentials. This is simple. The phones give people, I think, a false sense of security, but you need analog, you need a map, and you need a compass. It's so light, it's so easy to carry. Know how to utilize those things. Phones fail or you don't have cell service. And there's great mapping programs on phones. So it's a great thing to have with a backup battery, but it's not the only thing to have. So just starting out there. And then, it takes a couple mistakes and you could possibly lose your life out here. And that's typically what we see. It's not just one mistake, it's a series of mistakes. So it's just, it's such a variety, but, there's just this overarching issue that people are not coming prepared.
And I would imagine that this is a lot of people from outside the area, or do you get locals also making these mistakes?
No, 99.9% of the search and rescue missions in the last 5 years have been out of county visitors.
So what happens when somebody needs rescue? Who handles the effort to get them out of there, get them help?
So it starts with the Skamania County Sheriff's Office. We have search and rescue coordinators that are deputies, typically on overtime, to come out and coordinate the search. Thank God we have the most amazing volunteers in this area that I have ever seen. They are so selfless. They give so much. They buy their own equipment. They expend their own time to come out, regardless if somebody is negligent, if somebody's reckless, or if it's a pure accident. They don't care. They come out here and they serve.
What kinds of costs does the county incur? I mean, how expensive is it, or what are the burdens on your resources because it's a volunteer led effort, when this has to go down, you have to rescue somebody, what kind of costs are incurred by the county?
So the search and rescue coordinator, we don't have the manpower on the road to typically have somebody come off the road on straight time, even though that's still straight time, to come out and coordinate a search. And these searches are typically 6 to 8 hours on average. So we're paying overtime for a deputy or a sergeant to come out and coordinate a search at a high amount. Also, if we do have enough people on the road at the time to be able to pull somebody off the road, our county residents aren't getting the service that they deserve and that they paid for, because we're taking a deputy off the road to come deal with somebody who has typically put themselves in a situation, for the numbers, in a way that they could probably have avoided. So that's the cost. Now, we could, try to crunch numbers. I mean, what you're looking at, the state does pay a small stipend for fuel if the volunteers put in for it. So Washington State's, incurring this. If we have to get an air asset, if it's a state air asset, Washington State may be incurring some of the costs. But at the federal assets that we typically use, the United States is paying for this. So, I mean, just as a trickle down effect that, for somebody's typically a poor decision that could have been prevented, we're all paying for this.
So you want to change things. You're fed up, I understand, with how many people and the increasing number of people that need services and that burden that it's putting on your office. What's your proposal here? How would this new ordinance work in practice?
Sure. So it's a county ordinance. It would have specific language if the person is reckless or negligent, and not unlike our job as law enforcement every single day, we would have to articulate why this person's actions are meeting the elements of this ordinance violation. So we issue the infraction with the report explaining why. The person, it would be a flat fee. We're not going to charge some type of scale or, because I'm sure most people couldn't afford just an air asset to come get them if it's required. So I want to be fair. I want some type of accountability, but I also want some type of deterrent in this as well. So we issue the infraction. If the person is negligent or reckless, they have the opportunity to go in front of a judge. They can mitigate the infraction. They can, or contest it, or they can pay it. So they have three choices. They get due process. They go in front of a judge. The judge may say, I'm going to throw this out. I don't think this was fair. The judge may say full penalty. The judge may reduce it. It's not up to me. That's why we have a judicial system to be able to have different parts of government.
And I just want to read, you mentioned that the definitions for reckless and negligent are on the books, and my producer pulled that language just so listeners understand what it looks like right now in Washington state law. Reckless is defined as a person is reckless or acts recklessly when he or she knows of and disregards a substantial risk of danger may occur, and his or her disregard of such substantial risk is a gross deviation from conduct that a reasonable person would exercise in the same situation. Negligent is a person is negligent or acts with negligence when he or she fails to be aware of a substantial risk of danger may occur, and his or her failure of being aware of such a substantial risk constitutes a gross deviation from the standard of care that a reasonable person would exercise in the same situation. So basically, the negligent thing is ignorance is no excuse because, as you say, there's a way to look this up. It's not as though somebody going out for a hike doesn't have resources at their fingertips to be able to find this information. Some people might say, Sheriff, though, that this is an inexperience problem, people getting out in the outdoors for the first time? Is it fair to penalize them for being in the dark?
Sure. So I think that there's enough messaging out there, and we've continued to try and get more and more messaging to be safe. I mean, it takes a quick scroll. I think most younger people are on social media in some medium or another. They have access to everything. I don't think that, it's about fairness. I think it's about, if you're starting an activity for the first time and you just do a little bit of research to go, where am I going? What am I doing? I really do believe that maybe this will instill some self-accountability as we continue to move through this. This is why I dropped the information early on. The ordinance isn't even ready yet. I don't foresee it being all the way through if the commissioners even approve it, to say that it's not ready until 2026. So, I think that there's some time. It's really important to get the messaging out, to understand that maybe, a lot of the hiking websites, they may be able to put that on there. They may be able to help us with messaging. I mean, I don't want this to be a fee collection or a fine collection medium. What I want is to reduce search and rescue missions because of negligence or recklessness. That's what I want.
And you don't think that simply pushing for more education is sufficient? Basically, you need some way that this threat of a fine or penalty will really catch people's attention and motivate them.
So for the past 2.5 years since I've been in office, I've done nothing more than show our social media presence. It was really important to me to be very, very transparent. And in that, I was showcasing every search and rescue operation, whether it's individually, if it's something major. I did that on Saturday for a Friday's mission. But I will do an end of the month summary. And I do that religiously because I want people to know. I've worked with a videographer with our search and rescue volunteers. There's a video on YouTube about being prepared. We posted it everywhere. We just recently partnered with our other public safety emergency services folks to make a one-pager showing, realizing the response times for wilderness areas and to be self-sufficient. We've been trying, we've been doing this. And now you look at my numbers that I'm presenting for this year, it's not working. So what else can I try? This may be a big bust. It may not work, but I'm trying everything I possibly can, not only to try and deter this, because this is not something that we're going to be able to sustain. We don't have Title III funding on the table right now. We're relying on that with the Forest Service. That we have 80% of our entire county is comprised of Forest Service managed land. They're not logging. They're not supplying any financing. The county residents are going to have to pick up this bill. We only have 2% of our entire 1,600 square mile county that is providing property taxes. So I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do other than trying to find something else. And you can tell I'm very passionate about this, but it's not fair to my constituents to pick up this bill day in and day out.
And in its own way, proposing this and going on this media blitz where you talk to folks like me about it, it helps get the word out, like to people in Seattle who might drive down and think, oh, Mount St. Helens hike, that's a fun weekend activity that I can do with like a windbreaker and a little bottle of water. And,
right. Maybe,
hey, this will ring some bells for people.
And that's why I'm so thankful for these opportunities. I really was kind of surprised, which I guess, I was surprised by the attention that this ordinance has received. I mean, it's made its way all the way down to California, Colorado. There's definitely been some news about it, but I'm glad. This is exactly what I want. I want people to realize what little resources we have. I have 15 sworn deputies that are covering this enormous county and a very small residence. And we have an unfunded mandate that requires us through the state to be responsible for search and rescues. And with these numbers, it's an impossibility. There's something's going to have to give, and I don't know what that's going to be.
I know we talked about the pandemic pushing people to get more outdoors, and there's been a lot of data on national parks and state lands seeing more traction because of, the bump from 2020. But Why do you think specifically Skamania is suddenly seeing so many of these rescue? Like, do you think that there's specifically influencers that are pushing people to go out to specific sites, or like, what do you think is behind this?
I wish I knew. I think part of this year and being as exceptional as it is that we did not have the normal winter that we do in the gorge. Most often we have weeks on end where the main thoroughfares here are shut down. It's inaccessible. It really does restrict that. So I think our winter numbers were exceptionally high because of the higher snow levels and not the typical winter that we see here in the gorge. Another thing is the influencers. Now, I have seen some things coming up on Instagram that do advertise some of our local areas. There was an article sent to me here recently. It was somewhere over in England, but they called it the TikTok epidemic. And they were having a search every single day. And what I'm worried about too is burnout. These volunteers will burn out if we continue this. And I don't want to lose them. I don't want them to burn out. They are so motivated and so awesome, but we are completely reliant on them. And so I don't want them to burn out because of maybe some of these issues.
Yeah, there's not an endless supply of experienced people who are ready and able to drop everything and go out and find people, certainly. Sheriff, so before we go, just to clarify, so this would be your proposal once it's actually introduced, a flat fee. So like with a helicopter rescue, things like that, which could get up in the many, many thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, you're not asking people to cover that. It would be like one flat fee to help contribute to what's necessary.
Right. And I would even not even call it a fee. It's a fine. It's because you were reckless or negligent, you are being fined per this ordinance. And so, yes, it would be flat. I don't believe in fees. We're not in the business of billing for public safety. So that's not what I want to see. I want to see something, and nor do I even think that it's probably appropriate. But I think an ordinance be able to try to maybe recoup some of this, where may recoup some of our salaries, but it also may help recoup and assist our search and rescue volunteers to be able. I'm trying to get our Skamania County Sheriff's Office search and rescue team tied into an auxiliary that I'm forming, so that there is something that I could maybe support them as well. They should not have to pay out of pocket for their own, equipment. And, there are very, very generous donations that they receive, but I would also like to help them and support them in any way that we could as well.
Do you have a number in mind for how much that fine would be?
I'm looking at, so Oregon already has a law on the books right across the river from us that if you are negligent, they could be charged up to $500. I think that maybe $1,000 would be a nice flat fine where we could then, give some wiggle room to the judge, that maybe the judge says, hey, I can see where you may have made this mistake, and here's some wiggle room there. But I also think that there should be some type of teeth to it, to make it to where people kind of go, oh, maybe I should rethink hiking Dog Mountain and maybe go find something a little easier until I'm ready to go do that, and or that I'm more prepared.
Got it. Do you have a favorite spot to hike or camp?
I do, but I'm not going to say it because it's off the record. Keep the tourists out of there.
That's a good call. Keep the Instagram crowd out.
Right, exactly.
Summer Scheyer is Skamania County Sheriff, and she's working on an ordinance that would fine people who require search and rescue if they are negligent or reckless in their behavior, getting out there on the mountain when they're not ready. Sheriff, I really appreciate it. This has caused a lot of conversation amongst people in my newsroom, and I think, as you've noticed from the response, a lot of other places as well. Appreciate your time today.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me on, and I appreciate you spreading the word. I think it's really important.
And I'd like to hear from you. Should people who need search and rescue out in the wilderness be fined if they were being reckless or negligent? Or do you think this goes too far and maybe could discourage folks from getting out in the woods and out in the mountains? Give us a call. Leave us a voicemail at 206-221-3213. That's 206-221-3213. Or you can email us at soundside@kuow.org. Thanks for listening to Soundside. By the way, this show is only possible because listeners support us. If you are able to give right now, check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.